तस्य ज्ञानाञ्जलशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदामह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतपादकमलं श्रीगुरुवैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सकलरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्ण राधा सकलललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गे राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिया। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशितारिणे। माशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
So once again we'll be reviewing chapter 10, the opulence of the Absolute. Krishna is the source of everything. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Puya Eva Mahabaho Shruname Paramam Vacha Yate Ham Priyamanaya Vakshami Hitakamyaya. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Listen again, O mighty armed Arjuna, because you are my dear friend. For your benefit, I shall speak to you further, giving knowledge that is better than what I have already explained." Name viduhu suraganaha prabhavam namaharshaya aham adiki devanam maharshinam cha sarvasaha. Translation. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages.
Vetiloka Maheshwaram Asamuda Samarthesu Sarvapapay Pramichyate. He who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all worlds, he only, undiluted among men, is freed from all sins. So in the 9th chapter, Krishna introduced us to the most confidential knowledge. This is right in the center of the Gita. So Arjuna is now ready to hear about the opulence of the Absolute after Krishna has explained all his energies and established firm devotion with conviction within Arjuna.
So Srila Prabhupada starts 10.1 with the words Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Bhagavan, who he was referring to, Lord Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one who is full in the 6 opulences of strength, fame, knowledge, beauty, wealth, and renunciation. So we see Krishna's strength when he kills the demons in Vrindavan. For example, Aghasura, we all know, is a snake demon, and Putana, the witch. We see his fame where he grasps the attention of all the devotees of Vrindavan and in Dwarka. His knowledge, he speaks his wisdom to Arjuna, in the Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. His beauty, he blows away all the gopis and mothers of Vrindavan. And even it is explained in Damodarshtakam, Krishna's beauty is so nicely described. His blackish lotus face, which is encircled by locks of curling hair, and his cheeks reddened by the Indra fruit. And also we see Krishna's opulence of wealth. we know that the material wealth has no place against this opulence of Krishna's. Let me tell you a story. So, one day, the great sage Narada reached Dwarka and the wives of Sri Krishna. And the wives of Sri Krishna offered him a gift. Sage Narada actually wanted to take Krishna himself. But the wives of Sri Krishna and the sage Narada made an agreement. And they promised that they will give sage Narada a gift that is equal in weight to Sri Krishna, because they could not let go of their beloved Sri Krishna. And so sage Narada agreed, and the weighing balance was brought out. And Krishna sat on one side of the weighing balance, and the wives of Sri Krishna spent all their gold and silver and jewelries to try to match that weight on the other side of the balance. And so Satyavama, one of the wives of Sri Krishna, brought all her gold and placed it on the side of the pan. And so even after she brought all of this gold and jewelry and placed it on the side of the pan, Krishna on the other side was still too heavy. It wasn't enough. And so more gold kept getting added until all of the material possessions of the wives were gone. And so then Rukmini comes in, another wife of Sri Krishna, and removes all this gold and silver and diamonds, and she places a single tulsi leaf on the other side of the weighing balance. And instantly, this weighing balance, it rises up to reach Krishna's level. They're the same weight, and it's like crazy. And so we see later that this story all just symbolizes that wealth is not an important factor of life, and it is not what is needed to become closer to Krishna. And so we know that what matters is the pure devotion and the truthfulness to get rid of this maya, the illusory energy. Another opulence is renunciation. When Krishna leaves Vrindavan for Mathura, as Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur explains, all the Brijavasis feel the sense of separation when Krishna leaves. They want to be so close with Krishna, and so this feeling of separation is even reciprocated by Krishna as well. He doesn't want to leave his dear devotees. And so we see that, and even after Krishna is surrounded by his wives and sons and daughters, he's still not satisfied. He wants to be with his dear devotees. And so Krishna is able to renunciate, even though he has this deep connection, because he knows that he has to spread his dharma and righteousness as he kills Kamsa and the demons, and even helps the Pandavas on the battlefield. And so moving on in this verse, the great sages like Parashara Muni were here on this earth when Krishna appeared. And so they believed Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead and accepted him as such because he possessed all such qualities, all of the 6 opulences. And even Srila Prabhupada comments that before, in the 7th chapter, Krishna explains all of his energies and his and how they're acting together. But now in this verse, he is explaining his opulences, various manifestations, and the elements of bhakti. And we know that he spreads his confidential information particularly to Arjuna. And this is because he's a very dear friend of his. And Arjuna is non-envious of Sri Krishna. And so another reason why he reveals this information is because he wants to increase Arjuna's devotion. So you may be thinking, like, how can revealing such information increase Arjuna's devotion? Let me give you an example. So imagine you are discovering that an intimate friend of yours is actually a really rich, famous, knowledgeable billionaire. And you may feel very grateful that, oh wow, I get to be friends with such a personality. And even similarly in this situation, when one devotee discovers Krishna's greatness and is able to understand Krishna, he is going to feel very fortunate that Krishna is able to reciprocate this intimacy. Krishna shares this confidential knowledge, which includes the elements of bhakti, as I said previously, and these elements also entail the 9 processes of devotional service. And those include Shravanam, which is hearing, Kirtanam, chanting, Vishnu Smaranam, which is remembering, Padasevanam, serving the Lord's lotus feet, Archanam, deity worship, Vandanam, which is praying, Dasyam, executing orders, Sakyam, serving as a friend, and lastly, Atmanivedanam, which is complete surrender. Moving on to 10.2, we all know that as it is said in the Brahma Samhita, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is greater than all, and he is the cause of all causes. And if he is the cause of all causes, then of course he is the cause of all the demigods and sages. And so one thing Krishna mainly implies is that no scholarship, which can sometimes be possessed by these great sages and demigods such as strength, valor, beauty, wealth, none of these qualities will get you closer to Krishna, and they won't allow you to understand Krishna. As Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur comments, some may think now, okay, so if it's not that, some individuals may be able to detach themselves from sense gratification. So some may think like, oh, okay, so maybe these people that aren't able to understand Krishna aren't able to do so because they have sense gratification and because they are connected to the material world. And we may think that, but these demigods and great sages are actually completely detached from the material world, but they still can't understand Krishna. And we see that this is because they aren't able to hear the glories of Krishna and have this devotee association that we all fortunately are able to have. And so Krishna explains that if he wants someone to truly be able to understand him, they must be able to hear his glories and allow Krishna to provide his causeless mercy and loving devotional reciprocation. So one of the examples we see where a demigod is trying to test Krishna's power is in the pastime of Lord Brahma and the cowherd boys. So once upon a time, Lord Brahma, as we all know, who was born out of a lotus flower growing from the navel of Vishnu, was informed of Sri Krishna's ultimate power. And of course, he became very skeptical of it. And so he wanted to test, does Krishna really have all this power? Brahma is so curious, as we all know. And so he wanted to test Krishna's power, and in order to do so, Lord Brahma steals all the cowherd boys and the cows from Vrindavan and locks them up in a cave. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as I said, and he is the all-knowing and almighty. And because of this, he instantly knows what Brahma has done. He knows what's going on and quickly decides to expand himself into all the cowherd boys and calves. So he's replicating himself as all these cowherd boys and calves. And so as he does that, he does it through the cosmic manifestation. And even in the Vishnu Purana it is said, Parasara Brahmana Sakti, which means whatever we actually see in the cosmic manifestation, be it matter or the activities of the living entities, is simply an expansion of the energies of the Lord. So this expansion of the cows and cowherd boys was all the energy of Sri Krishna. And so also as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's expansion is situated in everyone's heart, the super soul. And similarly, in this case, he expanded himself as these calves and cowherd boys. And note, for one continuous year. And so when Brahma comes back to visit Vrindavan 1 year later, he sees that nothing has influenced his mystic power. He locked these cowherd boys and calves in the cave, but Vrindavan is still quiet and peaceful. There's no havoc or chaos arising, and so Brahma becomes very perplexed. And he sees that his mystic power is very small in comparison to Krishna's, and his potency is most definitely not as strong as Sri Krishna's, and it diminishes his own influence. And so Brahma is baffled by this, and he doesn't believe it when he first sees it. He's like, how can these cows and cowherd boys be at the same place, at two different places, at the same time? And he later realizes when Krishna takes his expanded forms and transforms them back into different forms of Vishnu, that this was Krishna's doing all along. Krishna was the one who expanded himself into all of these cowherd boys and calves. And so this allows Brahma to accept himself as a servant of the Lord, and he realizes that he doesn't have any independent power separate from Sri Krishna's. And it is stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the only master is Krishna, and all the other servants, and all the rest are servants. The whole world is under the waves of the material spell, and the beings are floating in the water like straws. And so we see that when Brahma accepts Shri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is not affected by the illusory energy of Maya that we see in this material world.
Okay, so can anyone else think of another demigod who has learned the true opulence of Krishna? Any Leela? Indra, yeah, exactly. So that's what I was going to talk about. You guys all predicted it. So, as we all know, right? So every year, Vrindavan was preparing to make an annual sacrifice, an annual offering to Indra, right? So Krishna one year he decides to ask Nanda Maharaj, like, why are you doing this? So Nanda Maharaj says to him, every year all these agricultural successes that we get, all this good luck, all this prosperity, all the cows giving the crops growing, all of this is because of Indra's blessing. And why does Indra bless us? Well, that's because we offer all this stuff to him. So Krishna starts saying, like, well, isn't all the success and distress that comes in our life from our past karmas, right? After all, our past activities is what causes these good and bad things to happen to us. And so Nanda says, well, it's all a part of a tradition, so we have to make sure it happens, or else, we won't get these blessings anymore. And we see in the Gita that Krishna, he says, even our next life, the birth that we take, the karmas which come with us, they're all from our past life. So Krishna, seeing that he's unable to convince his father, he has to find another way, right? Because he knows that Indra's pride and ego, all this false pride and ego is getting puffed up from sitting on this high throne as the ruler of the heavenly planets and bringing the rain and getting all these offerings from all these villages. So he knows that he has to show Krishna who he truly is. So then he tells Nanda Maharaj, isn't it Govardhan that we have such a direct and intimate relationship with? And Nanda Maharaj slowly starts understanding what Krishna is saying. And Krishna says, Govardhan is bringing us all this water, grass, fruits, vegetables, these canopies of trees giving me and my friends shade, and all these caves giving us shelter. It's truly Govardhan which is giving us all of these things. And so he tells Nanda Maharaj, this year let's divert all these offerings to Govardhan instead. And instead of trying to get these blessings from Indra, let's appreciate Govardhan. Because Krishna was trying to explain that it's not the fruits of the sacrifices that we give to the demigods which brings us these good things and this prosperity. It's the actions that we do. So Nanda Maharaj finally accepts and he says, okay, let's make it happen. So all the offerings are now diverted to Govardhan. And Krishna still has to show that he is the source of life, right? So he does this through the Govardhan. He takes on his huge transcendental form and starts taking the offerings that the Rajavasis have given. And through this he shows that he's not only the source of life, but he's the source of rain that Indra gives. He's the source of the power that Indra has. And ultimately, he is the ultimate benefactor of all of these things. So he began to eat all the food. And Indra, not realizing who Krishna truly is, thinks, well, who is this ordinary boy, right, in this material world? He's stealing all my offerings. All these people are foolishly following him. And everything they're doing is wrong. I'm the one who deserves all of this. So seeing that this is what happened, he started to torment Vrindavan with flooding storms, ice, rain, hail, thunder, and tried to bring destruction upon them as a punishment because he thinks that he deserves these offerings. And Krishna knew that he would do this. So in order to truly represent his limitless opulence to Indra, he lifts the Govardhan and protects the devotees with not just two hands, not just one hand, but his pinky, the weakest finger on his hand. He shows Indra his true potential and his true power and how he is the source and not Indra as the controller of the heavens. The reason Krishna did this was to show Indra that Indra isn't autonomous in managing all these universal affairs. There's an origin to this, and that origin is Krishna, and he's truly the supreme controller. So, after days and nights of trying to take down Vrindavan, Indra realizes that he cannot prevail in this. And he realizes that it is in fact Krishna who is the controller, and all my power comes from Krishna. All I'm doing is my duties of giving rain, my duties of leading the heavens. That's the duty given to me by Krishna, and he realizes Krishna and who he truly is. So Prabhupada beautifully narrates Indra's offerings to Krishna. I'll just read that out. Indra says, "My dear Lord, you are the original father of this cosmic manifestation. You are the supreme spiritual master of this cosmic world. You are the original proprietor of everything. As eternal time, you are competent to chastise offenders. Within this material world, there are many fools like me, who consider themselves to be the supreme Lord, or the all in all within the universe." So, we see that Indra understands, or once Indra understands that Krishna is truly the most opulent, he immediately surrenders, and he considers himself a fool. So what we can learn from this is, when we see the way Indra describes himself in the relationship to Krishna as a demigod, even a demigod is saying he's a fool. So who are we, right? So we can really learn from this how small we are, even compared to Indra, and then even compared to Krishna, right? We're just at his feet, a servant of a servant, like people say. And so, we go on every day and we think like, we're making this decision, we're making this activity happen, we're doing this and we're seeing the effects of it. So we end up thinking that we're the controller, or at least I do, right? I think that, okay, I'm controlling everything that's going on. But what we don't realize is that Paramatma, or Krishna, is observing all of these actions, all of these things that we want to control, and ultimately he is the one who is giving the sanction to do this. So he is the ultimate sanctioner. And Prabhupada explains that in 10.3, that one who understands this proprietary nature of Krishna, he will be the one who is truly spiritually realized. And continuing on with 10.3, the verse starts with Yoma Majam Anadim Cha, meaning Krishna is saying that he's unborn and beginningless. So unlike Brahma, who we heard of, Prabhupada also explains that although Brahma is unborn, he's not beginningless, because he sprouted from the lotus navel of Vishnu, and that means that he has a beginning. And also unlike the living entities who are described in the second chapter of the Gita as Aja, those living entities are people who are taking birth and dying due to material attachment. So we have to distinguish ourselves from the Aja described in chapter 2 and the Aja which Krishna is mentioning here. The difference is that we are conditioned souls, so we're always changing. But Krishna's body is unchangeable. Unlike us who are in the inferior material energy, Krishna is above all this, he's in the superior energy, right? So we see even when Krishna comes to take birth in the material world to spread righteousness and dharma, that when he comes as the son of Devaki, he's not born to Devaki first. First he appears in his transcendental form, and then he transmits himself. So this is what's meant when Krishna is both unborn and beginningless. Unlike the demigods like Brahma, he has both of these qualities and not just one of them. So similar to Indra, Yashoda also has many accounts where she realizes Krishna's true nature, right? And one of the most well-known of them is when Krishna eats clay. So Balaram sees Krishna eating clay one day, and he decides to go tell on him like always, Spencer. So he goes and tells on Krishna, and then Mother Yashoda says, okay, why have you eaten clay? Krishna says, no, I haven't. You can even check my mouth, there's nothing in there. And Yashoda's like, okay, open your mouth then. So Krishna opens his mouth, and she sees the expansion of the whole universe, all the living entities, eternal time, material nature, spiritual nature. Everything necessary for the cosmic manifestation is here manifested within Krishna's mouth. So right when she sees this, she has her realizations, right? And Prabhupada narrates this as well. Yashoda said, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, under whose illusory energy I am thinking that Nanda Maharaj is my husband and Krishna is my son, that all the properties of Nanda Maharaj belong to me, and that all the cowherd men and women are my subjects. All this misconception is due to the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. So let me pray to him that he protect me always. So what we can learn from this is, Yashoda immediately shows us right away that it's not with our own misconceptions and misguidance and misunderstandings that we can understand what this illusory energy is and how to get out of it. The only way to do so is, like she says, to pray to Krishna. Because Krishna is the only one who can give us blessings in order to realize his true inconceivable nature, right? So we cannot do this on our own accord. We have to have that devotion. And Prabhupada also further explains that everything material is inauspicious. And true auspiciousness only only stays with Krishna. So in order to get a taste of this, we have to do devotional service, which allows us to break free and through this inauspicious material nature, right? And we see this many times in many different stories how devotional service takes its effect. For example, Gajendra, when in the clasp of the alligator, he realizes that he is truly powerless. In the same way, I don't know about you guys, but me, I feel like you go on and on and on thinking that, okay, I have all this power, I can do this, I can change this, I can do that. But once you're in that specific situation where you're completely hopeless, you can make no change to the situation you're in. There's no power in your hands. In a moment like that, Gajendra showed us that the only one with all the power and control to actually make a change, to actually take effect in this universe is Krishna. In reality, we're powerless, and we rely on Krishna because he's the ultimate benefactor. Similarly, Draupadi, right? When she's being disrespected by the Kauravas, she knows that the only way for her to, come out of the situation is by relying on Krishna. Krishna is the one who gives his devotees strength and protects them, and he does so in these two accounts. So, throughout these three verses, we've come across three essential steps into becoming a better Vaishnava, correct? In the first one, we see hearing and association. Krishna acknowledges that Arjuna is his friend, and therefore he's conveying this confidential knowledge unto him. And we see Arjuna, even when given the option between choosing a whole army or Krishna, he chooses where the auspiciousness is, which is with Krishna, right? He knows who to associate with, and he associates with Krishna. In the same way, even if we feel as if we cannot associate with Krishna directly, associating with different Vaishnavas and devotees, and ultimately with the Guru Parampara, we will be able to get closer to this relationship with Krishna and get closer and understand who he truly is. And that brings me to the second point, which is understanding. We see, like Divya was talking about Brahma, right? Brahma is always known for his curiosity. He's known for his knowledge and his curiosity. The first thing which he does when he sprouts from the lotus of Vishnu's navel is look for his source. He says, where's my source? And he searches and searches and searches all through the darkness and finally finds Vishnu and understands that Vishnu is his source. So, in the same way, although we cannot, test Krishna like Brahma did by hiding them in the cave and seeing what happens, we can still have that curiosity which will lead us in the right path and take us where we need to be. So we can learn from Brahma that being curious will ultimately help us to understand Krishna. And Indra shows us that right after understanding, you'll understand your place in the world, right? It'll give you everything you need to understand your place in the universe as well. And that brings me to my last point, which is taking shelter. Just like how we saw Indra taking Krishna's shelter and surrendering after having all these realizations. We also see Yashoda, right? Right when she sees the cosmic manifestation within Krishna's mouth, the first thing she does is surrender. She doesn't try to understand, okay, what's going on, what is this? She immediately surrenders because she knows that that's the only way she can look past this illusory energy. So in the same way, taking shelter is the only way how we will truly be able to have that relationship with Krishna. And another pastime of Yashoda's which you all know of is the pastime where she tries to tie Krishna to the mortar, right? So Krishna's in trouble and Yashoda's trying to tie him. And each time the thread is 2 inches short. And even though she's not able to tie Krishna, at the same time, he has a black thread around his waist with a belt. So Krishna is tied with the rope, and Yashoda is not able to tie him with the rope. So what's going on there, right? And for us, this is like a paradox. But what this shows is that us, as these limited entities, as taking these mortal births, right? As limited entities, we're not able to understand the unlimited. It is not within our nature to be able to understand the unlimited. And that's the case only if we are not fully surrendered unto Krishna. So that's why we see right when Mother Yashoda surrenders, she's able to tie that rope. She's able to understand the inconceivable energy of Krishna. So the only way to get to this point is by hearing, understanding, and taking shelter. Those are the 3 main steps that we need to take. So I'm going to hand it back over to Divya now, and she's going to tie everything together back to the main topic.
So this is mainly directed towards the kids, but all of you are welcome to answer. And I want to ask, why is it important to understand Krishna as the source of everything?
Kids,
So the question is, why is it important to understand that Krishna is the source of everything? Why is that important? Any guess? Go ahead.
Because if we wouldn't, then probably, if we wouldn't understand, then probably we wouldn't understand that where we got everything, and we'll think that we're the one who created this. But then you'll end up realizing that Krishna is the one to create everything.
What a wise answer. So he said that if we don't know that Krishna is the source of everything, how would we know where our origin is? How would we know where we came from if we don't understand that Krishna is the creator of all? That's wonderful. Does anyone else want to answer? Okay, so let's move on. I just have a couple of quotes by Srila Prabhupada that I want to end off on. And he says, Krishna is the source of our generation, and no one is a better friend than him. He is the source of liberation, the chain of birth and death. He is called Amritamaya because he is the source of life for all living entities, all of us here, and even animals and plants. And so we know, he also says, Krishna is the source of everything. If you love Krishna, then you can love the universe. And ultimately, we have to understand that understanding Krishna is a part of self-understanding. And so we are kind of like a ray of sunshine. And in order to understand ourselves and understand Krishna, who is the sun, we must first understand Krishna. Thank you all.
Again, thank you all so much for the opportunity. We wouldn't be able to have a class without an audience, so thanks for supporting us, even though we're not that far ahead. But this last part, we'd like to open the floor up for some questions and comments, and we're happy to answer in any way that we can. You can go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
So Mataji asks, out of Krishna's qualities, what are my two favorite qualities? And so I would say that, I don't know, I'm trying to think. So I love that Krishna is always able to lovingly reciprocate his devotees' devotion, and so that's really like special for me to see as a devotee, aspiring devotee myself. And Krishna's beauty, he's so beautiful, and deity worship is just amazing with his beauty shown.
Yeah, for me, I'd say one which stood out while like researching for this presentation, which Divya went over, was renunciation, right? When I think of renunciation, it's like you leave something, and then ultimately you'll end up missing that thing, right? So when, like she explained, when Krishna leaves Vrindavan to go to Mathura and Dwaraka and the battle of Kurukshetra and everything, the inhabitants of Vrindavan miss Krishna. But what I read which really stuck out to me was that Krishna misses Vrindavan even more than Vrindavan misses Krishna, which I thought was like such an amazing quality in renunciation to show that, like she said, right, like the reciprocation is so strong between Krishna and his devotees. And second, I would say strength. It's just like a fun thing to always hear about, right? Like Krishna's strength. He killed this demon, that demon, 10 demons, 20 demons. Like it goes on and on and on. And like, you know, it's like an action movie, so you never get bored of it. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Don't be shy, they can answer.
You know, I just want to add one other observation, okay? This was completely Krishna's arrangement. Did you notice while all of these technical issues were going on, how calm they were? They just continued, nothing impacted them. Divya just went on and on with the class, and Nikhit quickly got his laptop, arranged everything. So I just want you to just, another thing, like this is not in the lecture what they presented, but just the observation of how these students, how these are even handling practical situations. So just amazing, the whole thing, how they handled it. So really, great job. Thank you so much.
Out of my mouth, because that's the first thing I noticed. I said, these kids are really in Krishna consciousness. So, Hare Krishna, please give them a big round of applause. Thank you. So, wonderful, wonderful. And it's been amazing seeing you both, you know, how nicely you are growing up in Krishna consciousness, seeing you from the very first time when you were holding the little Japanese, you know, holding. I'm not going to embarrass you more, but I have pictures to prove. And now giving class and leading our youth group, so it's amazing. And as long as we keep giving them the opportunity, these are the leaders of tomorrow. So we want to make sure that they are trained properly and that they have all the tools, not that we do all the work, because the teachers only guide, and you know, just like you have your children put the books in the backpack, give them everything that they need, but they have to do the effort, right? So they are prepared very nicely. And not only for this class, but also both of them are our CPB's ambassadors, like child protection ambassadors. And part is part here? No, but part is also, part, stand up. So these three amazing youth are our CPB ambassadors. You will be hearing more from them. And particularly, if you happen to park in the non-parking area, you will certainly hear from them soon. So thank you very much, you're just amazing. Keep it up, and thank you, teachers. You are doing a wonderful job. Nam Priya Devidasi and Nanda Devidasi, where is she? Yes, you are there right here. And of course, parents. Thank you so much for your continued support. Keep it up. Keep supporting me. And to all of you who are here today, who didn't think that kids are going to be giving class today. No, to all of you who thought, wow, wonderful, the youth is going to give class today, let's support it. Thank you very much. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. So we want to, well, first of all, is anybody here for the first time and brave enough to raise your hand?